Hello lovely people. I thought I would hop on here and talk to you a little bit about animal communication, and I thought I'd run through some of the frequently asked questions that I get in relation to my work as an animal communicator. So firstly, what can I tell you about animal communication? This isn't about visible signals from an animal like I spoke about in the last video in terms of treating animals with Reiki and watching out for their body language. This is a telepathic communication between human and animal. Obviously animals can communicate telepathically between each other as well. And this isn't anything special and it isn't anything new. This is something that many years ago everybody could do without even giving it a second thought. Telepathic communication was a thing. But in our lives, particularly in the Western world, we are very busy. We are on hamster wheels of work and, busy doing everything. Our brains are quite often bombarded with information all our waking hours, and that doesn't leave a lot of space for anything telepathic to happen. And so I thought I would run through, and I've got them written down because I won't remember them. I'd run through these questions that I get asked most often and give you the responses to them. So the first one is, how do I as a communicator understand what somebody's animal is saying? Because they don't speak English and I wouldn't necessarily speak their language. This system of animal communication, this telepathic communication, literally is the universal language of the soul. So we're talking about a soul-to-soul connection here, and therefore thoughts, feelings, sometimes smells, tastes, pictures are given to the communicator from the animal. Sometimes it's down to us to try and make sense of those and interpret them a little bit so that we can feed them back. But those things are how we communicate. And similarly, we put thought forms out to the animal in order to put them at their ease or ask them any questions that their humans might want the answer to. This is one that lots of animal communicators have a little bit of fun with, and that is when somebody asks, could you just have a quick chat with my dog or my cat or my horse, and also tell it to stop biting the postman, or tell it to stop kicking me when I try and put its saddle on, or those sorts of questions. So the first thing is, no, you can't just have a quick chat. It's not like sitting down and having a cuppa with a friend. This takes a little bit of getting into on the part of the communicator. So you have to have a very still mind and very quiet space in order to be able to receive the whispers that are coming from the animal, those thought forms, the feelings and the signals that are coming from the animal. And therefore the prospect of just a quick chat doesn't really cut it. The other thing that animal communication isn't is a tool to control an animal with. Now, if your horse kicks you when you're doing up its girth, it's not the communicator's job to say, oi, don't do that, that's bad. It's the communicator's job to find out why the horse kicks you when you're doing up its girth, or why the dog chases the postman. Well, I mean, that's a territorial thing and a behavioural thing as well, but I'll give you an example. A dog that was bought a new bed, who wouldn't sleep in the bed until the bed was moved out of a draft. I was able to feed back that I don't like my new bed where it is. You've moved it, it's in a draft. The minute the new bed was moved location, the dog was quite happy to lay in it. So those are the sorts of things that we can change. We can't tell the dog you have to lay in your new bed because your mum spent a lot of money on it. It doesn't quite work like that. Can you talk to all animals is number 3. Yes and no. You can talk to any species of animal, from the smallest spider all the way up to the biggest elephant. Everything has an energetic soul connection to it. So that's not a problem. And in actual fact, I've had a couple of really, really profound communications with spiders. That might give you the heebie-jeebies if you don't like spiders, but those communications for me were really powerful. So yes, we can communicate with any species of animals. Sometimes it's difficult to communicate with an animal if they don't want to be communicated with, and that could be for several reasons. One could be time of day. You're getting at the wrong time of day. They're too busy, they're too unsettled to get a connection with. That can sometimes happen. The other one is, and this is quite common with rescued animals, that there is a trauma there and they don't trust. And so it's our work to gain the trust of the animal gently. And I've never had one yet that completely refuses to communicate with me. Some connections are stronger than others. Sometimes you'll get pages and pages of notes, sometimes just a couple of pages. That really depends on how the animal communicates. And they communicate in a way that they are in real life. I'm thinking right now of quite a cranky horse. He was a bit grumpy and he told me to go away, doesn't want to talk with me, but we brought him round, managed to persuade him that he could give it a try, and if he really didn't like it I would go away and never come back, and he did, and actually the end result was really profound and he was able to be helped. So it's not about just giving up at the first hurdle, but it's also not about pushing ourselves onto an animal. How do I know you're not just making it up? Well, you don't, but animal communicators' job is to gain insights from the animal. That could be all sorts of things. It could be simple things like likes and dislikes. You've changed my food, I don't like it, that's why I won't eat. And it can be much deeper stuff than that. But the key thing is to gain validatable information. Those things that other people wouldn't know, those things that you couldn't find if you looked the person up on social media, things that can be easily validated. Yes, there are some deeper spiritual things that come to sometimes as well, but those things also will always have a meaning to the human. So a message from a higher being coming through an animal for the human. I'm thinking of a Labrador that I communicated with, and it was just what she needed to hear, because it was the answer to a question that she'd been putting out to the universe. So yeah, so that's how people know it's not all just made up. You need validatable information. Can you ask my pet specific questions? Yes, absolutely. How they're worded needs to be carefully thought about, but you can ask anything. However, they don't have to answer, so they may choose not to, but more often than not an animal will give you the answer to the question. Another one, which is quite a deep one, is what happens if my animal tells you upsetting. Now this is mostly to do with rescued animals and past trauma that they've brought through into their new home with them. It's our job to listen. Then it's our job to try and make a difference to that animal's life, and therefore when we hear of traumatic things, and as a communicator that can be really, really hard, particularly abuse cases, particularly when you're shown the pictures. Sometimes those pictures stay in your mind's eye for a very, very long time. So all that we can do is feed it back as carefully and as tactfully as we can to the human, because the human needs to understand why the animal is doing certain things, why it's frightened of a curtain flapping in the wind, or why it's frightened of certain noises or at certain stimuli. So it's important to feed back what we receive, but it's also important to feed it back carefully. what's the point? What's the point of doing that is a question. The point is to gain a greater understanding of the animal in question, and to be able to make a difference to its life. Horses, I'm thinking of another instance of a horse who'd been sent to a livery yard and was supposed to be going into competition, and was in the livery yard owner's name really naughty, so the horse was acting up. This horse was really, really unhappy and felt very, very misunderstood and felt far too much pressure, and it couldn't cope with it. So quite often, if you're a child, will act out if they're feeling too much pressure. Animals can quite often do the same, and this horse was just displaying lots of challenging behaviours, and so it was moved from the livery yard, which was a great outcome for the horse, and it was much, much happier and didn't, in inverted commas, misbehave. As an animal communicator, it is of my opinion that there is no such thing as a naughty animal. Animals behave in an animalistic way. It's up to us to interpret what they're doing, and if it doesn't align with our expectations, work a way of very gently guiding it or understanding why, and then we can make a difference to the animal's life. Why can't I do it is another question. And the answer to that is you absolutely can, and anybody can. It's just really as simple as being able to still your mind and tune in. And lots of children have this ability and will say, "Mum, the cat said so and so to me." And lots of mums will say, "Don't be silly, cats don't speak." And that immediately shuts down that part of the child's brain that thought they heard the cat talk, which they did. So anybody can relearn this. It's not learning a new skill, it's remembering an old one. Can you diagnose what's wrong with my pet? No. If your pet is not well, it needs to go to the vet first. But in the case that I worked with a dog once who was being treated for acute hip pain by the vet and was having no positive outcomes at all, when I communicated with it, it told me that its back was the thing that was sore. And once the vet did acupuncture on the dog's back, the dog was a lot happier. So those are things that can help with health. Also, an animal may tell you, "I can't eat that particular sort of food, it makes me feel sick." Therefore, the health outcome from that particular communication is a very positive one. But if an animal is sick, it has to see the vet first. The communication can come second. And lastly, how long does it take to communicate with an animal? Well, that can be how long is a piece of string sort of question, because sometimes you can get a really quick, really strong connection and get lots and lots of information from the animal within 30 minutes. Sometimes you have to approach a little more softly, and the information comes in little waves, and then we have to work with the animal. And quite often the way that I work is I have a first sitting with an animal, and open up the lines of communication. And for me, now it's different for every communicator, so I can only speak from my personal perspective here. For me, I get lots of basic information from the animal, things about living circumstances, food, places I like to walk, my favourite toy, those sorts of things. My stablemate annoys me, all of that stuff. And then I often find that when I go in and have a second session with the animal, there seems to be a little trust bond that's grown, and the animal seems to be more open to communicate. It's a two-way thing. The frequency needs to be aligned to be able to communicate with an animal. There are lots and lots of good animal communicators out there. So if there were any instance where my frequency was just not aligning with an animal, and to be honest with you. It's not usually the animal, it's the human. Sometimes if, say, a human has had a conversation with me and thought, don't like her much, that can be enough to put a little bit of a block on a communication. And that's fine. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I swear too much, perhaps sometimes. I don't know. People don't expect rude words from a spiritual lady. That's an aside. Anyway, so I haven't had an animal I couldn't communicate with yet, but sometimes the connection takes a little bit more work. Sometimes it's harder than others, and there are just a number of reasons. The human in the equation that belongs to the animal, or the other way round, dependent on your perspective, can play a role in that. Just sometimes, not always. So those are my frequently asked questions in terms of animal communication. If you'd like to know any more about animal communication, please get in contact with me. I can probably talk the hind legs off a donkey, if you'll pardon the pun, because I wouldn't do that, obviously. Give me a call and I can talk to you. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.